Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Leadership and Diversity in Medicine. I'm Nan Nessel, your interviewer, and how is everyone doing today? It's been a really, really cold several days for all of the United States, and it's no exception here in Las Vegas. I know that our podcast hasn't been on a regular schedule lately, and I apologize for that. We've had some technical issues. Those seem to be getting better. We are at an odd time today for a number of reasons. We will soon be getting back to our regular scheduled time of 11 to 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on Wednesdays. We are here at a unique time today because we are bringing back Dr. Joe Charles by popular demand. As you know, Leadership and Diversity in Medicine is that video vlog, the vlog that talks about how we are going to change leadership and diversity in medicine because we can, because we care about what leadership and diversity in medicine are going to look like in the next 10 years. And if we visualize it, it will happen. So we're bringing back Dr. Joseph Charles. Joe Charles is an OBGYN, board certified and licensed in the state of New Mexico and possibly other states as well. We'll ask him when we get him in here, but he is a board certified OBGYN born in St. Thomas, the United States Virgin Islands. And I can't talk today. It's been a really odd day. Got his bachelor's and his medical degree at Michigan State University at the College of Human Medicine. And he is married with 2 children. Let's go ahead and bring him up here. Good evening, Dr. Charles.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. But I did not know until this afternoon that Michigan State had a College of Human Medicine as well as a DO school. Tell me about that.
So for a long time, and I don't know what the situation is now because this was over 20 years ago, they were the only school for a while that had an MD and a DO school on the actual physical same campus. And that was a bragging right to them for a little while there. I think since that time, things have probably changed and there are more. But that was interesting. We did our first year together. We had our basic sciences classes together, physiology, anatomy, the usual first year stuff together. And then we kind of split up and did less in the second year and even less in the third and fourth year.
Cool. So tell me what have been your observations, your personal observations about leadership in medicine with regards to minorities in the medical field?
So it's been an interesting journey. As would be expected in the United States, as things stand today, it seems as though minorities are a little bit underrepresented, meaning that our representation or percentage in the general population is not quite the same as you find in hospitals, in medical schools, and outpatient clinics, and all the other things. And that's something that has been improving over the years, but still is something that takes some time and needs a lot more work to get to the point where we are well represented.
Yeah, I see that not in just Blacks. As you know, I was a traveling physician for nearly 10 years. And in that time, I think I only saw one Black physician in a leadership position. And what was his title? Head of Public Relations. He would have been an outstanding CEO, but they had him as head of public relations. I've only seen 2 women CEOs. Both were certainly had the adequate abilities for the position, but only one of them had the communication skills for it. As I've traveled around, I saw a number of Asians in leadership positions in the Pacific Isles, but not on the West Coast where you would also expect that. And on the West Coast and the Southwest, I didn't see any Latinos in leadership positions. You would think that leadership would mirror the geographic area that they're representing, but it doesn't even come close.
Yes, that would seem like the logical way to think about it, but in reality, it doesn't seem to be quite the same. And I guess there are a number of reasons for that. And one of the leading ones of it, which is just having the volume of physicians represented in medicine by itself is still not caught up to where we are. I think African Americans are about 14% of the US population, but as of right now, I don't think we are 14% of the people in medicine, meaning physicians, DOs, MDs, and that sort of thing. So we're still struggling to get to even be at an even number for our representation in the medical field.
In medicine itself. Have you ever been in a leadership position in medicine?
So, you know, there was one time where I got a leadership position. I was actually, there were two different times. At one time I was at a small hospital and there were only two OBGYNs and two pediatricians, and we had a very small med peds committee. And for a little while, I was the chair of the med peds. I mean, I'm sorry, the OB peds committee. I said med peds, but OB peds committee. So I did that for a short while in a small hospital. And at that same hospital, I also was the head of the robot committee. The hospital had a Da Vinci robot that it brought in, and it was brand new to the whole hospital. And I kind of got that one by default because none of the general surgeons or none of the other OBGYNs were really interested in the technology. And I am one of those early adopter kind of guys that I see the new technology. I try to look toward the future and see what's coming and be on the leading edge of what's coming. And so by default, I ended up being, I got a committee together and, you know, we had to make some rules and where were we headed, what we're going to do, how do we validate people to use the machine. And so because I was the most interested person, by default, I did end up being on that committee as the chair of that committee for a while.
Maybe you'd like to put something in the chat box about how those are used when you get a chance. You've told us a little bit about what that experience was like. Would you like to elaborate that, or would you like to tell more about whether or not you'd like to aspire to be in more leadership positions in medicine?
So, you know, my experience has been very interesting. I always try to tell people the United States of America is a great country and I love it, and I'm not moving or going anywhere else. The environment that we have been in for the last 2 to 3 years under our last president has made a lot more conversation come up, or make it a lot more acceptable to have these conversations about race and diversity in America. As an African-American physician, what my parents told me when I was very little about being African-American was, you're going to have to work 10 times as hard to be accepted as just the same as anybody else. So if you were not excessive and brilliant, you'd be considered less than everybody else. And that has turned out to be true. So one of the struggles that African Americans have is that you have to, your personality, your knowledge, your clinical skills, your surgical skills have to be better than everybody else for you to be considered just an average guy. And, you know, many times when I stand by, I see other physicians who have many more complications than I do, have many more issues, patient issues, and they are left alone to do what they're going to do. Whereas every time there may be any small issue, and when I say small, I mean a really small issue that they would say nothing about to other people, it becomes a big deal for me. And I have to prove myself and explain and go through a whole bunch of hoops. Now, the fact that that happens is one of the reasons why African-American physicians are not in a lot of leadership positions, because number one, you have to work extra hard. And some people, myself included, sometimes you just don't want to, you work hard to take care of your patients, but you don't want to have to do all of the extra just to get into a leadership position. Then when you do get into that position, you're judged at a higher bar than everybody else. So you start to think, well, I know myself. Me personally, I'm a good self-assessor. Most of us as physicians are. And I self-assess and I look at what I'm doing and I know where I stand and I work that hard, and still I don't seem to live up to what everybody else requires of me, even though I know that my standards are well above inpatient care, you know, showing up on time, you know, all the things you want a physician to be good at. And so at some point, you start to back down. When earlier in my career, I was hard worker and wanted to attain certain things, but would notice that other people would get it and I wouldn't. And so all of a sudden now I'm saying, well, why am I doing all the work when the guys who have been there shorter than I have and have not worked as hard as I have don't get it? And so, like me personally, I just got back to where I said, you know what? I'm just going to work hard and take care of my patients because I love what I do and my patients mean the world to me. And I get my satisfaction from that and not worry about leadership positions. So, and that's kind of, it's not complaining. It just is the way it is. And we don't complain about it. We just learn to buckle down and do what you got to do and take care of your patients.
The other thing I've noticed is that you also have to have a more even temper and much better communication skills.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, people will not tolerate attitudes, and when I'm in the OR, it's not my personality to do this, but I can't be one of those surgeons in the OR who throws the instruments around and yells at the surgical techs. If I did that, I wouldn't last anywhere I went. But fortunately for me, that's not my personality. That's not what I want to do. So that's easy enough for me. But you have to have a different temperament and to get along and stay.
Absolutely. So how do you think changes can be brought about with regards to minority leadership in medicine?
Well, the change is going to be a tough one. Aside from African Americans and other minorities, we have many subgroups that need to be addressed. Women is a group that have also come a long way, but they also are neglected when it comes to being put in positions of leadership. And part of the reason that happens is because the majority sees the minorities as having a problem. They see women as having their problems. They see other groups, LGBTQ, everybody else has a problem. What we as a society have to do to overcome that is for all of us to understand that we all have a problem. It's not because you're not in that group doesn't mean that there's not a problem. And many people don't like to acknowledge the problem, because in acknowledging that there's a problem with diversity, women, African Americans, Asians, when you acknowledge that the society that you live in isn't as great or fantastic or terrific as you thought it was. And some people just, they can't accept that. I had a conversation in the OR with someone not too long ago, and was telling them as an African American man that, I do have some race issues that I have to deal with or have had to deal with in my lifetime. And the person looked me right in the eye and told me it's not that bad. They told me that they have African American friends. They see me as a great African American guy. And basically that African Americans make a bigger deal out of it, and it's not that big of a deal. Now, if I'm telling you what my life experience is and what I've experienced myself, and your response to me is, wow, how can it ever be addressed if you're part of the majority and you think there's no problem? Everything is absolutely fine. You guys are babies, you're soft, and we'll never make progress. So I think we are going to make progress, but it's going to be very slow, and it won't be made until everyone in society, women, African American, Latino, Asian, when everybody recognize it as a problem, you all work together to make it not an issue. And until that happens, it's going to be a long, slow road. Now, the places that I have worked where I saw that, things were a little bit different, the representation was different. It's places where the leadership recognized that was an issue. And a lot of people think that people get things because they're African American, or a woman got it because she's a woman. And that's the craziest thing, because there's a minimum requirement to do the job that you have to get a leadership position. Because somebody is in a place where they got it, sometimes people want to say that's the reason you got it. But there are people who are very assertive, who recognize the problem and say, if we don't start giving a more diverse population chances to do things, it will never happen. And so when leadership realizes the problem, and when we all realize the problem, And I'm not a complainer. I'm not complaining. This is like I said, I love this country. I love the United States of America, the best country in the world. Blah, blah, blah. But there are issues, and until we all recognize these issues and decide that we need to do something to help work on it, it will always be an issue.
I agree. Well, thank you so much. I'm glad you said that this is a we problem, not a problem for individual groups. I completely agree with you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to do a wrap up and I'll be with you shortly. So, yes, diversity is a we problem. It's a problem of helping one another. I saw a post on social media just a couple of days ago where years and years ago, someone interviewed Margaret Mead and said, with all the anthropology work that she had done, what is the first sign she'd seen in ancient anthropology civilizations? What is the first sign of civilization? And he was thinking it would be some tool, some primitive tool. And she responded, a broken femur that had healed. Because if you're an animal that's broken its femur, you can't run if you're prey and survive. You can't go and get water while you're healing. And the same with the primitive human species. If you can't go and get water, you won't survive to heal the injury. If you can't run from prey, you won't survive the injury. So if your femur has healed, that means that someone has stayed with you and cared for you and helped you to heal. Helping one another is the first sign of civilization. Let's all be civil to one another. That is a sign of leadership. So I encourage you all to keep an eye out for Leadership and Diversity in Medicine as it moves to Wednesdays between 11 and 1 Mountain Time. Every other Wednesday, we're going to have some amazing guests coming up. We're going to have Caitlin Donovan of Fried the Burnout podcast. We're going to have Dr. Natalie Hodge Davis, the physician entrepreneur that we've discussed in the past. And by April, we may be moving to every Wednesday. So stay with us, keep posted. If you know of someone that you believe would be a good guest, let us know in the comments below. If you yourself are interested in becoming a guest, comment below and we'll let you know what the next steps are to becoming a guest. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again.